Hello, I'm Darren Magee, and today's question asks if I would discuss pathological envy, sometimes referred to as narcissistic envy. Now, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel. But just as a reminder, this video is not a substitute for support from a mental health professional, nor is it a tool to be used to diagnose someone. Now, envy is often confused with jealousy, but they are different. Jealousy is something we feel whenever we fear we may lose someone or something to somebody else. Envy is what we feel when we see somebody with something we don't have, something that we desire. We may see someone who is perhaps more accomplished or competent than we are, and there can be a healthy level of envy. Envy can inspire us. We may see someone who's successful, so we might want to hang out with them. We might want to learn from them, get some advice or guidance. Envy is not so healthy when it becomes that green-eyed monster, pouring scorn and ridicule on others for their achievements. And when it's pathological, it can be quite painful and destructive, not just for the envious person, but for those that they envy as well. With pathological envy, what we can often see is a toxic reaction to some perceived lack. Those on the receiving end can often be condemned, ridiculed, hated for possessing what that person feels they don't have, something they lack, something they desire, or perhaps something they feel entitled to. If the envy goes unchecked, it can lead to things like ruthlessness, unhealthy competition, devaluing, and relentless one-upmanship. It can become venomous, it can become vindictive. The object of the envy is often hated and dehumanized. And there are different kinds of envy. There can be an envy over possessions, personal qualities. There can be envy around feeling excluded or unable to join a social group. And quite often with narcissism, there can be a bitterness and an envy over not being able to dominate that social group. Now, according to DSM-5, one of the diagnostic criteria of narcissistic personality disorder is being envious of others or having the belief that others envy them. And there are different kinds of narcissism. It's not a one-size-fits-all. There's many different shades, many different colors in between. I often think of it as a spectrum. But with grandiose narcissism, what we see is a need for some kind of superiority. So there may be ridicule and scorn over other people's accomplishments, their skill set, their knowledge. There can even be rage if someone does achieve something or even just feels good about themselves. People with grandiose narcissistic traits tend to have an overinflated view of themselves and can feel threatened by others and experience a lot of resentments towards those that they feel don't envy them or have something that they don't. When they feel that way, they tend to retaliate, so they may gaslight, they may slander, brag, ridicule, devalue, or as I said a moment ago, fly into a rage. Now, an example of this would be, I remember a place I worked in many years ago. There was a guy who had just mentioned that he was looking forward to moving house on Friday. In less than a minute, one of the women in the office flew into an absolute rage, a real temper tantrum, shouting at him, slandering him, having a go at him, telling him he wasn't doing this properly, he wasn't doing that properly, and telling him if he didn't buck his ideas up, he could forget that new house. With vulnerable narcissism, what we often see is people believing that others are better than them and feeling inferior and feeling inadequate, but believing that it's very unjust. Like whatever it is they envy is always out of reach to them. It's always beyond their means. They may even sabotage themselves, sabotage those closest to them to keep it out of their reach. They can, more often than not, they will make others feel bad about feeling good, try to guilt trip them. Now, an example of vulnerable narcissistic envy would be a friend of mine that went on a first date with someone. Now, he had been sharing a house with his friend, and while he was on that date, his friend kept texting him to tell him how bored he was, how lonely he was, stuck in the house by himself, and saying, I suppose this is our friendship now over, now that you've found someone new. When he got back from the date, that friend presented him with a lot of stuff. It's like he'd spent the evening trawling through Facebook and Twitter, trying to find things about that girl he went on the date with, things he could present as evidence that she was bad and undateable. With vulnerable narcissism, I think what we see is There is no will to improve themselves, that they would rather stay in a state of strain and inadequacy, and they want others to be in that state as well, either that or to feel guilty about not feeling bad like them. Now, with different kinds of narcissism, it may manifest itself differently, but the recurring themes, the common themes we see is hostility and resentment towards others. We see offence being taken at other people's happiness or achievement, often regardless of their own achievements. There is also shame and depression whenever they're not socially dominant, and that lack of insight prevents self-improvement. Now, I often think with narcissism, it's almost like all or nothing thinking. It's not just that they have to do well, they have to do better than everyone else. It's not just that they have to feel good, they have to feel better than everyone else. When they don't, this brings up intense envy. Now, some of the common effects on someone who has maybe experienced the wrong end of narcissism and pathological envy, often what we see is them ending up hiding their achievements. They feel guilt over feeling good about anything. They can feel a sense of shame and play down their own accomplishments. They can even come to believe that their own talents, their own gifts are a threat, and that maybe they are responsible for that envious person's feelings of resentment, their inadequacy and their bile. There can be a constant fear of being sabotaged. For example, children who grew up with narcissistic parents, they may have recognized their parents getting vicarious glory and regard and praise through their good behavior and their achievements. But behind closed doors, the envy was still there. They were very quickly devalued and criticized when there was no one else around. Their relationships with potential partners may have often have been sabotaged. Again, that narcissistic envy. You know, the parent knowing that their own relationship was unhealthy, toxic, disastrous, it was failed, but taking no responsibility for their part in it. Now, as those kids begin to grow, they may begin to succeed in different areas. The narcissistic parent may take credit for that success, but still maybe try to devalue it or sabotage it somehow, or maybe make the kids feel guilt and shame for succeeding. In a working relationship, there may be scorn, criticism over their colleagues' efforts, their work ethic, any praise they might get. They may try and take that for themselves. And in a relationship with a partner now, in the early days in particular, there may well have been pride, support, but as time goes on, among other things, what they'll experience is ridicule, contempt, emotional outrage, or maybe just no acknowledgement at all. Anything the partner does or achieves is just ignored. It's like it doesn't matter. Now, even if they do try to bring something up or say, look, I'm feeling quite good about this, the narcissistic partner can often lead them to believe there is something wrong with them for having any sense of pride or joy. They're very quick to try and steal that thunder, or to clip their wings, or to kick the chair out from under them, whatever phrase you want to use. So what's going on with pathological envy? Well, what we see is a very poor, unhealthy level of self-esteem. Now, with narcissism, regardless of haughtiness, arrogant behavior and so on, we see someone who feels worthless, unlovable, while at the same time believing that they are unique and special and entitled. Anything that takes that feeling of being special, being the alpha, takes that away, it leads to feelings of worthlessness, and what we see is often an unconscious effort to manage the psychological, the emotional injuries. These injuries were quite often inflicted on them whenever they were younger. The traumatic patterns that were inflicted on them are now being inflicted on others. So we will see different things, but as opposed to two extremes, they will either project their own deep-rooted feelings of inferiority onto their target, or they will subject themselves to different kinds of degradation over feeling inadequate. Now, someone with a good, healthy level of self-esteem can envy others, but like I said earlier, they may feel inspired. They can feel quite good for that person, even celebrate their success with them. They may be envied themselves and they feel flattered, but they're able to share in their success with others. They can bring out the best in others without feeling threatened. Sadly, with narcissism, when it comes to pathological envy, unless they realize how destructive they are, not just to others, but towards themselves as well, maybe seek out some kind of help and support, they're just going to end up living in a constant state of shame, bitterness, and resentment. So that's a brief outline of pathological envy. There is so much more I can add, and going into deeper into the pathology of it, and maybe I'll do that in a future video. But in the meantime, if there's anything I've missed, if anything you want to add, please feel free to use the comment box below. There are some interesting conversations starting around these videos. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel for future updates on mental health related topics. And until next time, thanks for watching.